Hey, this is Alex Piak, and welcome to the Dominant Agent Podcast, the place where real estate agents and brokers come to learn directly from the top agents, coaches, trainers, and industry influencers on how to build profitable, scalable, and enjoyable businesses by becoming the dominant agent in their market so they can live life on their terms. Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Dominant Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Piak. And as you know, we are committed to helping real estate agents build profitable, scalable, and enjoyable businesses so that you can live life on your terms by bringing you guys access to the absolute best real estate agents, coaches, trainers, and influencers in the industry. And our guest today literally checks all of those boxes. Today, we're going to be talking to Anthony Lee. Anthony is a 22-year retired military veteran, author, 17-time Ironman, 5-time Boston Marathon participant, All-American athlete, real estate investor, and $1 million gross commission income earner as an agent, and competitive food eater. Anthony, welcome to the Dominant Agent Podcast.
What's up, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, dude. Let's just start off. Competitive food eater. I know this is a real estate show, but man,
heck yeah.
Talk about, what is that about? I never knew that about you.
No, so most people don't, unless you go out to eat with me a lot. I'll always beat you, I'll always be done before you. But no, really. So training for Ironman, you burn a lot of calories, and really Ironman is a eating race. But we're not going to get into that. But what it is I can actually drink things really fast, and I can just eat like a horse, like nobody's business. So one of my first competitions was at Chicken Roost over in Maryland, in Annapolis, Maryland. It's a famous place. Their challenge, and the thing was, it's a 6.5-pound milkshake and a 1.5-pound hamburger. Okay. So the record was like, 17 minutes and something. And I was like, man, I can jam that. So 1.5 pound hamburger, 1 3/4, I forget what it was, had that down in like less than a minute, like had that hamburger down. And now it's this, you could Google this. It's a 6.5-pound milkshake. It's as big as your head. So I started in on it and I had it down. Now, if you can imagine this big round cylindrical thing, probably diameter, at least 10 inches. And it's filled with the best milkshake ever. And I'm just sitting here chugging it. So I get down and there's like 1/4 of an inch left and I'm on pace to break the record. I'm at like 14 minutes and I'm going to win. But I couldn't drink that last 1/4 of an inch. I couldn't. And you're not allowed to puke. So even when the challenge is doing it, you can't puke. So it took me 10 minutes just to drink like 1/4 of an inch of milkshake. So I didn't get the record. I still won. But that was the first one. And that started it off. So then I just started going around the country. So I would look up, local fairs and eating contests and, different challenges like big pizzas or sushi or whatever it is, like that big steak in Amarillo, that 72-ounce thing, whatever. I could, easily hammer that down. So I just look around the country for those, man. It's fun.
That is awesome. Hey, I guess that's a good little hobby, man. You're thin as a reel. You're an athlete. You run, so you're in great shape. So your body probably burns through it like ridiculously fast.
It's fun. And people just look at you too, like, did you just put all that in your mouth? And really, it's being able to swallow stuff. Like I also won, and I didn't tell you about this. So back in 2000, I had to be like 2008 or 9. I was the Michigan Beer Mile champion. So what the Beer Mile is, it's fun. You can get a group of people together. But anyway, you go to a track, they actually have a Beer Mile Championship website. You can have certain cans, like you can't have these big cans or mouths or whatever. Anyway, you have a beer. So you open your beer, your clock starts when you open your first beer, you chug a beer, run a lap, chug a beer, run a lap, chug a beer, run a lap, chug a beer, and run your last lap. So if you puke, you have to run one extra lap. And you can't run your lap until that whole beer is gone. So when this phenomenon started in the mid-2000s, it was just kind of a college thing, but it went worldwide. And there's actually the Beer Mile Championship. It's insane, right? So in like 2008 or 9, I was the actual Michigan Beer Mile champion. And I ran my mile. I think I did it in like 5:10, 5:15, something like that, right in between there. And that's with chugging all the beers.
Damn.
It's crazy, bro. Crazy.
That is nuts, man. Awesome. So tell the folks, how long have you actually been in real estate?
Oh man. So it's been probably a good 2 years, 2.5 years, almost 3 since kind of that transition. There was a 6-month transition there between coaching and training that I still sold and was closing out my book and, handing everything off. So I'd say 2.5, 3 years now since I've been in full production.
Full production. What were you doing before real estate?
So right before real estate, man, I was in the military, 22 years. I've been a real estate investor that whole time. So I knew about real estate. I knew about that side of it. But when I retired, I didn't want anything to do with the military and all that. I wanted to go out on my own and have that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I came into it cold. Like I retired from the military. I was on maternal leave and I took my test and got my license and hit the ground running, literally.
Okay, very cool. So I always wonder, I've had conversations with people. I believe people who have a military background do really well in real estate. So I want your take on that. What were you able to pull from the military that you've been able to implement into real estate to have success?
Yeah, I love that question. So, that's the whole basis of my coaching and training program, the Brotherhood, is I took the same combat mindset. So I was a Air Force pararescueman, Special Forces, the elite of the elite in the military. And so I was able to take that mindset. So when I went into something brand new, I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to find someone to, one, help me, show me the blueprint, coaches, trainers, right? And two, I knew I just had to go at it 100%. So, that combat mindset of here's my plan of action. I had a plan. I had a blueprint. And I was like, this is what I'm going to execute on. When I say I executed, so when I moved to Denver, my wife wasn't with me because she was still active duty. So she was still stationed there. So it was just me. And when I executed on that plan, I did it with relentlessness. Like I was out for blood, right? So I was working 16 to 20 hours a day from the moment I started, right? It was just relentless. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. It was me and a cat. And as you know, you've been to a Tony Robbins event, and I didn't know this was at the time because I hadn't gone to Tony yet. But I burned my boats because when I came to Denver, I came there and I had like $1,800, and it was enough for rent and gas. And so I had to sell a house in that first few months. I wouldn't let my wife or the money I had saved or coming in pay for anything. I knew I made it so I had to sell a house. So I gave myself no option, and that meant that I worked 16, 20 hours a day every day to get that first sale. So it was just that relentless combat mindset. And so from the military, we come in with discipline. We know that there's an objective we need to conquer, and then we make a plan, and then we just go for it.
Talk to me more about discipline, man. I feel like that is the character trait, and I might even be wrong in saying character trait because it may just be a skill of becoming disciplined. So I'd like your opinion on that. But I do believe that people who have the ability to exercise discipline, they do two things. With discipline, they become consistent. And when you're consistent and you do things frequent enough, you eventually get the result.
Exactly.
So do you think, is discipline a skill? Is it a character trait? Can it be learned?
I think, so here's the thing about discipline. Even being in the military, for 20 years, you see people that come in, they're very undisciplined. They're the ones that are always in trouble. They're not the leaders. They're the average performers or below, right? So I think it is a learned trait, but I think from being in the military, if you stick it out long enough, you're institutionalized. So you have to have the discipline or you will not thrive in the military. The discipline, like you said, Jocko wrote a book, Discipline is Freedom, because when you have that discipline, it creates that consistency you're talking about. Because as agents, I see agents all the time, one day they may be doing this and they'll go for it for like 3 days or a week or whatever. And if it doesn't work or they don't get the results they're wanting, they'll stop or they'll let up off the gas or they don't have the discipline to do it every day, day in, day out. And so getting that discipline and the same with training. And I think a lot from being in the military and athletics, you have to have that discipline. If you're going to complete an Ironman or a marathon, you have to get up and run every day, swim every day, bike every day. In the military, you have to get up every day and train. If you're going to go and be a special forces combat person like I was, you were out there training in your craft every day, no matter what. So it doesn't matter if it's raining, if it's snowing, or if it's -10, if it's on the training calendar. So in the military, it's very great. We have a training calendar, and it's broken up into a full year, right? And actually even more years out. And then we adjust as we go, but it's a full year. And then we have quarters into weeks into days. And so that's how I did real estate. Is I said, here's my year, here's my quarters, here's my months, here's my weeks, here's my days. And then that got down into the hours, right? So I was very disciplined on making sure that I did all the stuff I needed to do every day. Now, I found out very quickly, once I had so many clients and I started becoming a listing agent, that buyers, I had to move my calendar because I didn't have time to do as many showings. So that's when I, brought on buyers agents and did all that sort of fancy stuff. But at the beginning, it was very disciplined. I did showings during a certain time of the day, and that's the only time I did showings. I never missed my prospecting call time, and I never missed going out to my groups and everything that I did. So it was very disciplined. And you're right, to be consistent, you have to have discipline.
Got it. No, I definitely a big believer in that. So I love how you took your year into months, into weeks, into days, into hours. It sounds like your discipline was in almost like time management, what you were going to do in that year, in that month, in that week, in that day. Talk to us a little bit about, first, what I love is you had a plan. So what was your plan? And then how did you chunk that all the way down into what you need to do today?
Yeah, wow. So my plan coming out of the gates, and I still do this with all the agents I coach, my plan coming out of the gates was I wrote a number down, and I wanted to do 728,000 in GCI my first year. And the broker that I was with laughed at me at the time. I said, all right, well, I'm going to do it. So I said I had to do that. And I had, my mentor at the time was, okay, if you want to do that, here's exactly, well, he rounded, he's like, based on what I know, of your market, you're going to have to do X amount of phone calls, have this amount of appointments, have this, he broke it down. And so I just took that big number and we started breaking it down to those weeks. And then I knew that, okay, so if I needed to have, 3 listing appointments a day, then I needed to have at least, make 20 calls a day to get those 3 appointments or more. Usually it ended up being about 40 calls a day. So I would make I had on my calendar 40 calls a day to get to 2 appointments a day. And then I would have 3 groups a day. And when I said 3 groups, this was back in 2011 and 12, this is when Meetup was popular. I went to 3 different Meetup groups every day. You gotta realize my wife, that's why I was working 20 hours a day. I'd have a morning Meetup group, an afternoon Meetup group, and a nightly Meetup group. So those were 3 live groups. In between the first 2, that's when I made all my phone calls. In between the other ones is when I did listing appointments and showings. And then afterwards, after that 3rd one, I would go get all the paperwork done because I didn't have a transaction coordinator yet. So, that's how I broke everything up. But I knew the numbers. It was really a numbers game. And it's still a numbers game in today's real estate world. Even with proliferation of online leads and everything, it's a numbers game. How many times can you contact them? How many times can you touch them? And in what ways can you touch them to make yourself memorable and differentiate yourself from every other single agent out there? So
I love that. So you basically reverse engineered what the big goal was. 720, like that's a first year agent. That is huge, right? I mean, very, very few agents ever get there. You're coming in saying, this is what I want to do year 1. The broker's probably looking at you like a little sideways, like, dude, you're out of your mind. But you knew enough, like, all right, this is a math problem. Like, I just need to know how many homes do I need to sell? What's my average sales price? My average commission? Okay, now I've got that number. Yep. I don't need to do all that today. I've got 12 months to do it. So let's break that number into a monthly goal. And then I don't have to do it all in, one day. I've got, 30 days in a month. I've got 4 weeks. So I love that because I believe people get really paralyzed and overwhelmed when they look at that big ass goal. And it's like, oh my God, I told my wife my goal this year was to make $250,000. It's January 1st. I've got zero. And that 250 weighs on their shoulders like a ton of bricks. And it's like, well, don't worry about 250. You need to sell 2 homes this month. What are you doing today to get an appointment, right? And all of a sudden, when I ask people they come to me and they've got big ass goals, and I say, okay, cool. I reverse engineered it. The goal is 3 listing appointments this week. How does that feel? And they're like, oh, that feels so easy. But when they said they wanted to make $500,000, they were stressed out about it. So it's taking the big, bringing it down to the minute so you could feel comfortable and confident that that is an attainable goal. Sometimes the big goal doesn't truly feel attainable. It feels like you're pushing a rock up a hill. So I love the reverse engineer strategy. So early on in the beginning of your career, what was it? What were you doing? What were your lead sources that you were focused on? How were you getting those appointments?
Yeah. So one big thing too is I had, it's funny when you said the brokers laughed at me, they did, but you got to realize I had no limiting beliefs coming in. I knew nothing, I just knew what I wanted to make. And I knew that based on my previous life, I could do it. And so my lead sources coming in was first off me hitting the ground. And I am talking about, and I realize this was wrong now, but it taught me something. My broker had me go out to get 200 no's in the town of Cherry Creek. So Cherry Creek is a very affluent area. So I started in luxury too, by the way, just so everybody knows, I started in luxury real estate. Very affluent area of Denver, Colorado, right? Think of what is it in LA, Hollywood or Rodeo Drive, right? That's what Cherry Creek is in Denver. So I started there. He wanted me to get 200 no's. So I walked up and down there trying to get 200 no's. That's how I got my first house. So my lead source was walking around. Next, I started was back then, if you remember, they had the book of expireds and FSBOs, right? So after a week and a half, my broker was like, here, nobody else in the brokerage wants to call on these. Do you want to do it? I was like, what is this? I didn't know. It's like, these are expireds. And he explained it all to me. And I was like, great. So I started calling and, people hanging up, and then I was like, screw it. So I knew the area of town where some of the most expensive houses were in Cherry Hills Village. So I picked some expireds there, and I walked up, started knocking on the doors. My first one, I knocked on the door. The guy said, hey, are you another agent? I was like, yeah, I know your house just expired. He's like, look, what do you want? He's like, I don't know. I don't really want to list it again. I was like, well, why not? He goes, everybody's been calling. What can you do different? I was like, dude, I made it through like 6 or 7 wars and I didn't die. I think I could sell your stupid house. And that is what I exactly said to him. And he let me in the door. He's like, cool. So that let me into my first listing appointment. I got that listing. So that was my first listing. And then after that, through that listing, I started getting all the listings around there. Fast forward a month, I had 4 more listings in there because I was taught where every listing is within a 2-mile radius, there is 3 or 4 more listings to be had. So back in that time, I did my mailers. I walked door to door and knocked on the doors. And then after that, my next lead source for buyers after that was all those meetup groups and my military connection. So I leveraged, Facebook wasn't as huge back then, but LinkedIn still was. And I still had access to my whole military past, right? Just like someone that went to college or high school, wherever people don't realize they have access to things they don't know yet. So I accessed that military network and said, hey, who's coming here to Denver or getting stationed at Fort Carson? So I started getting leads and referrals from them. And then I started getting referrals. They said, well, they're not going there, but they're going somewhere else. So I started bringing in a revenue, a stream of income through referral income. But then what happened is I was very good at asking for referrals through all those meetup groups and stuff, because I just went and I added value. I wasn't, that over the top realtor guy. I wasn't, that's not how I networked. I added value by either, helping people if they wanted to exercise, whatever it was, going for a run, whatever. I created those relationships and I was consistent. So that's like you said earlier, Alex, I was consistent. Every single group I went to, I made sure I was there every week, no matter what. Okay. And they started to get to know me. So I was just one of the gang. And so people started coming to me. And then one of the big things I did for people is after they bought a house from me, buy or sold, I would have a party. I would have a housewarming party. So I threw housewarming parties and I met all their friends one-on-one. Right. And so if people are putting together what I'm saying is everything that you hear about what agents should be doing, I actually did it and took it just a step further. Right. And I just went all in on it and I was consistent on it. And that's just built up that business. And in year one, it built it up so big. I had no idea that it was going to get that huge. So the referral network I built that first year still today serves me. I still have people calling me, hey, someone said we're coming to Colorado, get in touch with you. And I'm like, well, let me refer you to a guy because I'm not selling houses anymore. But so that was how my first referral sources started.
Man, that's awesome. You're super resourceful, man. I think that is, there's something there with being resourceful. You didn't look for the problem or the challenge. You look for the opportunity. And I think there's a great lesson learned there, because how many people do you honestly, I mean, you talk to a lot of real estate agents. How many do you think would say, man, these people aren't coming to my area, but I could still get a referral if I said, like, most agents would be like, no, that's too much work, or they wouldn't be consistent. You looked at it like, I'm going to get paid without having to do the work. Just by being a connector.
Exactly. Man, and that's how I paid. So when I'm after my first brokerage, that's how I paid my upfront fees at Remax. Those years I was there is on referrals. That's it.
Man, that's incredible. Yeah, just being resourceful, looking for the hole in the market, affinity groups. I mean, military is an affinity group, past colleges, things like that. And it was awesome that you leveraged into that. I think people, I don't know anybody. Well, who do you know? Did you go to school? Can you tap into that college? Did you go to the military? Can you tap into that? What about your church? What about, there's a lot of affinity relationships that people don't look at as opportunities. But what I love about what you said is you looked at them as relationships. The opportunities come when you invest in building the relationships.
They do. And it's funny. So agents tell me all the time when I tell them about those affinity groups, like the churches and all this, and they're like, yeah, but everyone's a realtor there. And I was like, that's one, that's an excuse. Two, it's limiting belief. And three, if you build a relationship with someone, over time, they're going to use you or refer you. And if you do it in the right way, you'll get tons out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. Everybody's a real estate agent. Oh, my market is different. That won't work.
Exactly.
Those are self-imposed limiting beliefs. And you have to say, is that true? Are you telling me 100% of people in this room have a real estate license? Well, no, not every. Okay, then you got to get that out of your mind. Don't focus on the problem. Focus on the opportunity. And you used the word before, differentiation. That people are going to do business with people that are going to solve their problem. Right. Like, that's right. If you could separate yourself by just offering a superior answer to what their big challenge is, a superior result, you'll win, man. Differentiate yourself from the masses and you won't be looked at like the masses.
That's true.
What were you doing early on to differentiate yourself?
Man, to differentiate myself early on, I was doing so one thing is once I finally moved into my house in Colorado Springs is I was known as the running realtor. So I live in a great community, higher end homes. So there's 1,700. So every week I would get a postcard with a free dinner on it, right? Hey, take this to this restaurant, you get a free dinner. But I didn't put it in the mail. I ran to every house and handed it to them or put them on the doorbell. So everyone in the neighborhood after 3 months, I would have housewives standing out front waiting for me, be like, oh, I knew you were coming, and they would get that. So I was the running realtor. Like it was great. Everybody knew me because I wore short shorts. I had a stack of cards and it took me 3 days to run around to 15 homes. But you want to talk about listings? I got listings like nobody's business, right? Nobody's business. Then I was also known as the networking guy. I wasn't known as the realtor. So fast forward. So this is about probably 10 months in, 11, going into my first or second year, I started throwing big networking events with partners that I made, like either financial advisors, business owners, cleaners, whoever, right? And I invited them, but I only invited them is I wanted to know all their friends and all their clients. So I would have huge networking events, by invitation only, right? We said invitation only networking events from all these preferred partners. So we would have 80 to 100 people at these restaurants and bars that I would have, and we would have them once a month, right? So I had different partners that I had done business with or whatever lining up to bring their customers or their clients to my networking events because I'd have tons of food. I always paid for all the drinks. So yeah, each event cost me usually around $2,000, but out of that, I would usually get like 10 or 15 buyers, probably list 5 or 6 homes. It didn't matter, right? So I was known as the networker because I wasn't there trying to sell real estate. I was there trying to help people solve, like you said, their problems. And back then I was like, well, instead of just having a carte blanche networking group, let's have an invitation only networking group. And people loved it because they felt special. So it was a differentiator because it felt more high end, it felt special, and they knew that if they were there, they were chosen by whoever invited them.
I love that, man. So you have really done a ton of networking. When you threw those parties for your clients, like the thing I want people to realize is what Anthony was doing is he was leveraging the relationship with his client to enter their community. And immediately when they threw this party and they invited their friends, their families, their coworkers, Anthony's now part of that. And you're inherently going to have more trust and likability because of the common relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Huge.
And it's huge. And it wasn't, and it would always be, I never actually, it was funny how it happened. I never actually, you want to create raving fans. And back then I was creating this raving fan. I didn't even know it at the time, but I was creating raving fans. So I never actually, in those events, I never actually had to ask for referrals, see if they wanted it. People would come to me and say, hey, I need to buy a house. Would you help me buy a house? Hey, I need to list my house. Mark said that you had listed his buddy's house and his house. And, I'd love for you to come take a look at mine, see what we can get, right? People were coming to me, so I didn't have to chase them. So it was perfect.
Man, what I love about this is what we're talking about today is so much different. I mean, I've had agents on that talk about postcards. I've had agents who talk about FSBOs, agents who talk about expires, agents talk about, we're talking about networking, man. And like most
Pure
people
networking.
don't want to pick up the phone and call cold leads. Okay, leverage into your relationships, get networking. I love the client party, dude. That is just so genius. And just so you guys know, listening, that's one way to do it. You could do this digitally today. Like, are you friends with your clients on Facebook? Are you posting pictures of their closing? Are you doing things like that they will then share on their page? You have to look, if the average person's got 500 friends on Facebook and you take the picture, you post it on your business page and tag your people, and it shows up on their feed, now all of their people get to see it, right? And what's associated is you, and you're not being a sleazy salesperson. It's just positioning and just being that advisor, being that trusted person of the network, man. And I think that is just what made you go that route? I'm curious because it's so unique from what I've heard from a bunch of people.
Yeah. So what made me go that route was, I guess, working in the Pentagon, working on the Joint Chiefs, and then seeing how business ran up there. It was, so in the Pentagon, there's 22,000 people that work on there. I'm on somebody's staff, some general staff, right? And for me to get stuff done in that building, it wasn't necessarily that my general had 4 stars and yours had 3 or whatever it was. It was the network that I had created through the other lieutenant colonels and majors, right? That I could push stuff through. And then really what it was is I went through and I always brought the secretary's candy. I brought the secretary's coffee. I, created this network of these secretaries around that building that just loved me. And so when I had paperwork, I needed to get a file through, I would take it to that secretary whose boss was that lieutenant colonel major that I already knew, and they would push it through or get it done because they controlled everything. They controlled the calendar, they controlled the flow. So when I was seeing that in Washington, D.C., and also I saw that outside of the Pentagon, where I saw how generals got got stuff done with senators and congressmen. And I realized that it necessarily was those relationships that could help you succeed. So when I saw real estate, I was like, okay, this is a numbers game. I need to contact, if I've had 40 people to call, and then in those second or third years, it's like, okay, I need to make contact with at least 100 people a week that have been referred to me to close at least 50 of those a week to get them into the pipeline. I was like, I need to make contact with 100 people. How do I do that? What's the best form to do that? And how can I make it so other people are saying it for me so I don't have to seem like that sales guy? Because going to network events, you always see the realtor has their card out, trying to hand it to people, trying to, ask for referrals or whatever right there without ever adding value to their lives. So I chose another way of doing it. And it still holds true today. So all my students, the people in the Brotherhood, they hold amazing open houses right now. And out of each, not open houses, I'm sorry, housewarming parties for people. And I have a guy in Denver doing the same thing with the elite networking group. And, housewarming parties, we're probably pulling 5 to 7 clients each out of each single one. Now, for everyone out there listening, just think about this for a second. Let's say you have a closing at the beginning of April. You have a housewarming party at the end of April. You get 5 to 7 clients out of that. Now you have another buyer buys in 2 or 3 weeks. And now you see this stacking effect and this compounding, like compounding interest. You see how it keeps growing, and you keep doing this for every single person. And once you have this thing rolling, you just have clients nonstop the whole year. And that's how you can fill a pipeline. And I haven't, utilized a Zillow lead or anything once at all.
Hey, you had momentum, man. And at some point when you have momentum, you got to be smart enough to get out of the way and just keep doing what works instead of trying to find the next shiny object. So I love that. What was it that made you have the mindset of focusing on listings versus working with buyers?
Yeah. So once I had like 10 buyers at one time, I would say probably 10 or 12. And it took time away from, getting, I'd say it didn't take time because I still made the calls, but doing as many listing appointments didn't make sense. But I saw from listing that first house, I was like, okay, you got to remember, I'm brand new, so I have no preconceived notions. I'm like, well, it makes more sense to have agents bringing their clients to me instead of me having to go out there and show houses, for 6 hours. My time's better spent listing. So I made that. I was like, I'm just going to be a listing agent. Well, buyers come with listings, and the types of parties and stuff I was throwing, I got buyers, but they still, I still would try to attend closings, even though I had buyers agents working with them. But the listing side, I saw myself as doing that. And then my personality too. So my personality, back in those days, going in and doing that listing presentation, having the expertise of working on staff in the Pentagon and being able to give presentations to people. I was a great presenter. And so I knew how to close. And I just early on, it was just, to me, I looked at the money and the numbers. Like I said, it's a business to me. I run it like a business. And I looked at the numbers and I'm like, I can make way more money listing homes than I can just being a buyer's agent. I can have still as many buyers, pay a buyer's agent, and still make a stream of income here, make a few $100,000 here, but make the bulk of my money just from listing homes and listing homes that average 3 million and up. So I'm going to throw that in there because my average listing price was, I think, 3.7 to 4.3 million was my average listing price.
That's awesome. I love that. So we'll wrap it up here. I've got 2 last questions. Number 1, would you recommend are the top 2 skills a real estate agent right now should be focused on, pig-headed, disciplined about learning and mastering that would directly impact their ability to consistently sell more homes in the future?
Gotcha. So the first one's easy. So all my clients, the first thing we talk to is omnipresence. You even talk about it being, you talk about it in your book you wrote, being that omnipresent, dominant agent for your marketplace. Now, I also tell people, that dominations means you have to have content. You have to think outside the box. You have to think different. So this thing right here, we're a very video forward company. So I get people out of their comfort zone, get used to recording videos. So they record videos all the time. I make sure that they're consistent with their what they're doing online. And what I mean by that, consistent, not in the same thing that every other agent is doing. I want them to differentiate themselves in the workplace. So in the marketplace, they need to be different than every other single realtor out there. So what that means is they pick 4 things to do, one big thing a quarter. So like with school now, with everything that's going on in the world, some of them might not be doing this, but most of them have chosen their first big thing in the quarter, and they're going to promote it, is they're hiring the Kona ice truck to come out and be in their kids' neighborhood or in wherever they're farming, to sit there and give those out. And they're going to really promote that, be omnipresent with that on social media across all platforms. They get on there. I want them to make sure that the people that they have in their sphere already, right, that they're getting weekly updates. I want them to have an email list. So I make sure they have an email sequence. So this is part of that omnipresence. I make sure I set them up with, if they don't have it in their CRM, I make sure they have an email sequence for new leads, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months. They have a drip system. So we get all this back-end stuff set up for success, right? So that's the number one thing, is agents need to be omnipresent, and you need to be a great marketer, okay? A friend of ours, Mike Reese, says the best marketer wins, and I think he's right? Even though, we don't call ourselves a marketer, if you're a great marketer, you'll do it. So the other, the second thing I can say agents need to do right now to succeed is to believe and mindset. So belief and mindset. I'm huge into belief and mindset. You've got to believe that it's true. If there's a doubt in your mind that you're not going to do it, then guess what? You won't do it. All right. So you have to have that combat mindset. You have to have that grittiness, that determination, especially with the times we're about to go through in the next 2 to 3 months, or however long it is. It's those that have this isn't a word, the stick-to-itiveness, right? The grit, the determination to do it, and those that believe in themselves. So if you don't believe, here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do. If you don't believe in yourself, and you don't believe what you're selling, and you don't believe it, it comes through with how you're talking to the client, and they can sense that, and it'll come out in that listing presentation and in that listing appointment, and you won't get it. So you have to believe in yourself. So mindset is huge. In fact, when we bring people on, not mindset, belief, and the whole thing, that's our whole first day. Like for the upper level coaching mastermind clients, they get a whole day with me, and we don't even talk real estate until the end of the day. It's all mindset and belief and planning. We don't even get into real estate until the end. Then we get into some granular real estate stuff. So those are the top 2 things, man. And there's tons more, but if you can do those 2 things, be omnipresent and have that belief in yourself and your mindset, you'll be unstoppable.
Yeah, I love that, dude. Like you, that's one of the things you and I kind of bond on is Tony Robbins and mindset. We've got a lot of similar beliefs around that, because I do believe that, the reason why agents usually hit the wall is there's something internal that they may not even consciously be aware, but they have a pre-programmed rule around success.
Yep.
So there's that self-limitation, and you see they hit the wall, they fall back, they grow it back, they hit the same wall, they fall back, and it's like repetitively doing the same thing. And there's usually an internal belief or rule that they have put into play that they don't even know. And until you solve the mindset, guys, the best scripts, dialogues, presentations will only get you so far until you have a toolbox, a tool set, and the awareness, which I think is number one, that there's something holding you back, that until you focus on that's when you solve that mindset, that self-imposed limiting belief, that's where extraordinary things happen in life. And I want to share this book with you, Andy. I just picked it up. It's called It Takes What It Takes. And I heard this gentleman on another podcast, and it's really amazing It's about neutral thinking. And what I love about this, and this is what I am hitting home with all of my personal clients right now. And we've both heard Tony, right? Like Tony's not this positive mindset. Like you can't look at, he always uses this analogy. You can't look at your garden in your flower bed and say, please no weeds, no weeds, no weeds, no weeds. Because the fucking weeds are going to grow, right? Like that's what it is.
Exactly.
Like there's no hocus pocus. But you have to be able to look at the past is the past. It can't be changed. The right now, the present is, don't make it worse than it is. Don't make it better than it is. Take it for what it is and understand the current reality. And then know the only thing in our control is what we do right now that's going to influence and impact the future. And the book is all about that, dude. It's incredible.
Oh, sweet. I'll pick it up.
Yeah, it tells a lot about Russell Wilson. And there's a great little part of the book about Michael Johnson when he set the 200, was it the 200 and the 400?
2 and 400, man. Yeah.
Dude, that part of this book blew my mind. He was mindset, man. And he would do things that were shaving like a 1/100th of a second. And that was his mindset. Today, I'm going to shave 1/100th. Tomorrow, I'm going to shave one. He didn't start with, I'm shattering the record, dude. It was self-improvement every single day. You'll love this book, dude, because it ties into mindset. And I love that, dude. Any last bit? You talked a little bit about the brotherhood. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, man. You can find me. I'm in Alex's group on Facebook, but I'm on Instagram, Anthony J. Lee. Anthony J. Lee is my page, the Anthony J. Lee on Facebook. My website, anthonyjlee.com, will be coming out probably, I would say, 2 weeks. They're finishing it up. Everything's going to be on there. The blog, everything will be on there. But yeah, just reach out on any of those platforms. The Brotherhood is for men. I found that, I want to help men not only sell real estate, but help them in life and be better husbands, fathers, brothers, that kind of thing. So you can find me there. For right now, I even actually just opened up our private group to men during this tough time. So that way we can help them out. So that's opened up to male agents out there. But yeah, if you need any help, male, female, whatever, look me up online. I'll help you out.
I appreciate it, man. I love your willingness to give back, contribute, and help other people. So I appreciate your time today. This was amazing, amazing stuff. And I appreciate you sharing with everybody.
Thank you, my man. Thankful for you. Grateful.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dominant Agent Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to leave a comment and review on whatever platform you're listening on so that we can continue to bring you the very best guests.